6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast. My name's Chris at Lightforce, joined virtually by Anna Forsyth at aforsyth03. Anna is actually the brains of the operation. I mean, you all should know that by now, but welcome, Anna.
Thanks. I'll take it for sure. Yeah, I mean, I feel like sometimes I'm the brains, sometimes you're the brains, sometimes neither of us are the brains.
Can you give me an example as to when I was ever the brains of this show?
Well, you are the one that understands everything technical about our show, and I do not, so...
I mean, you use the term understand quite loosely in that definition, let me tell you. I've watched a YouTube video maybe or two, but...
More than me.
Yeah, still, when it comes to hockey knowledge, yours is far superior than mine, and I've got a significant head start, both in the fact that I'm older than you, and two, have lived here my entire life. I didn't pick up hockey many years into my, being. So, again...
Well, that's very
Anna
generous,
better than
and
Chris.
I appreciate it, but I think we're a good balance because you know old-timey stuff that I do not.
That's because I'm old.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens.
You're an old-timer.
Through osmosis. Yeah. Speaking of old-timey stuff, if there's something I remember about the Vancouver Canucks is when the going gets good, the going can get bad. And that's sort of kind of what happened over the course of this road trip, which, thinking back to you and I prognosticating, I think the games played out where the two of us sort of thought they might, like where there might be some struggle or where there might be some trouble. Like we take our thoughts and put them together and we predicted it.
Yeah, we did pretty much predict how it would play out. I guess the only thing that we thought would happen is that they would get 2 wins over the Sharks, which they did not. But like the way the Canucks played the games is definitely how we drew it up.
Totally. Just to the T or the I or the, J. I mean, why is it to the T? Like, I presume it's not the letter T. It's like a T on the golf course or
it's probably a T on a golf course.
I don't know.
I don't know where that comes from actually. But there you go. I do love origins of expressions and stuff. So if anyone knows, tell us.
Is this something that Pagani would be able to tell us? I know she's big into, like, she's words. Is she also expressions?
If anyone can, Pags would be the one. Susie Dent is a good follow on Twitter and Instagram for that kind of thing. Interesting words and origins of phrases. There you go.
Well, this isn't a English podcast. English
Thank
language
God.
Word. Yeah, no kidding. It would be trouble for me, for certain. At least you can lean on the fact that you speak I guess it's the King's English now, because
I'm
still getting used to acknowledging the appropriate, representation of the crown because of the change that's happened once in anyone's lifetime.
I know, it's weird, because even when, they say, oh, well, that lawyer's a KC, and I'm like, KFC? Then I remember that King's
they're Korean fried chicken, Kentucky fried chicken, whichever fried chicken of your...
KC and the Sunshine Band.
Ooh, there we go.
That's old school.
Yeah. Do you know what? If I ever were to become a lawyer and is it invested into King's Counsel?
God knows.
I don't know. I am going to name my practice the Sunshine Band. And so I can sign it quite legitimately, Chris Golden, KC, the Sunshine Band.
Let's just say that's a giant if.
There's a lot of things that must occur just to get me to the point that I could even claim to be a lawyer, let alone become King's Counsel. Yeah,
Anyway,
man,
off the rail.
This show is off to a great start.
Hot start.
You noted here that in the introduction, we forgot to mention something last week, Anna.
Yeah, I wanted to close this to be my final thought last week, and I forgot. So, apologies about that. But last week, very exciting news that Luke Prokop made his AHL debut. So we have officially had an openly gay AHL player now. Like, that's a professional league. Like, he is a professional, openly gay professional hockey player. I think that's so exciting. Seems like he's going from strength to strength in his career. I've heard him speak a number of times when he was in junior, and he seems to be, like, developing into just this very emotionally mature, like, eloquent young man. So I think it's really exciting. Obviously, it really does put an onus on the NHL and, you know, the NHL to be more inclusive and really live their hockey's for everyone mission. But yeah, I think it's a very exciting time.
It certainly is. And, you know, I'm out of curiosity, was Luke playing in the ECHL or? Because I know he was junior, but like the transition into playing in the A month and a half into a season.
Yeah, so I think he was playing in Atlanta in the ECHL, yes. So he was playing in the dub last year, or a mixture of the dub and the ECHL, playing a lot of his games down in Seattle last year. But yes, he has had 9 games in Atlanta for the Gladiators. There's only one R in that, which I think is a missed opportunity. And then he's had 3 games for the Milwaukee Admirals. So it's pretty cool.
Well, congratulations on making it to it's not the show yet, but like stage left, right?
Yeah, it's like the dress rehearsal. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you would call the A in the context of the NHL being the show, but whatever it happens to be, congratulations on making it, Luke. If there's something that can't be done in Vancouver, yet has happened, is to keep a secret at the Raj.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, were you as shocked as I was by the secret that was the Royals just happening to be at the game on Monday?
Certainly. Like, it got my wife's attention. Like, is that Prince Harry? Why, yes, it is. It is Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan. Like, it was definitely a surprise. And if there's something that I have grown to learn about the Vancouver sports scene, is that there are no secrets. Word gets out quick.
It's a small town, like masquerading as a city.
Yeah, it's
that sort of thing.
It's exacerbated when it has something to do with the Vancouver Canucks, especially in the sports context. One, a lot of people work at the Raj. Rogers Arena has a variety of different staff and levels of sort of staff. And as a result, word trickles out from time to time. It's one of the reasons why you often will hear from those around the media scene as to what's going on in Vancouver before the actual organization were to say so. So for, you know, Harry and Meghan to, one, be at the game, and then 2, to have had the arrangements to have obviously him, you know, drop a puck and all that, and have all the graphics for the Invictus games, which if you happen to watch social media content showcasing, oh, it's game day, they had the Invictus Games graphics and all of that, like whatever time they were doing their, like, you know, programming run through on the screen and all that. So it's not like, oh, Harry and Meghan showed up at Will Call and said, you know, I know a guy. It quite literally was a planned experience. So yeah, they were at the game, and you know, for those who may recall, his grandmother happened to also drop a puck here in Vancouver between the same 2 teams.
Yeah, I know.
A very, you know, handsome Mike Ricci And I mean, I shouldn't, take a shot at Mike because professional hockey player is about to lose a tooth or two. Mike had the greasy hair as well going out, real good. And I can't, was it Marcus that was captain at that game?
Yeah, I think so. That's the picture I have in my head.
Yeah. I just remember it was Mike Ricci because it's like, well, there's one of the Queen's subjects. But the point being, Harry drops the puck. And every time they showed him, like on the broadcast, he seemed to be really enjoying himself.
Yeah, I mean, so first of all, I was, like, when I say I was surprised, I literally thought people were kidding because I turned the game on. I often try and skip the anthems on purpose, but I turned the game on, like, as the puck was dropping, not the ceremonial one, because actually I was just, like, trying to finish Canucks conversation for the day, and then I was just like, oh, social media says Prince Harry, and I'm like, is this a joke? I don't get it. And then I realized it was the real thing, so I was pretty shocked. But they seemed, really into it. Him and his brother are pretty avid sports fans. Like, Prince William is, like, head of the, like, FA, like, not the actual head, but, like, the figurehead of the FA. They're really into football, really into rugby. They grew up playing polo, which I guess is just a very rich person's sport, but, it is a sport. So it doesn't shock me that they got into it, but it was cool that they were so engaged from start to finish. Like, they stuck around for the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Which his grandmother did not.
Fair enough. I don't think the Queen's that interested, to be fair.
I'm
she likes horses
curious
and dogs, and that's it.
If, they have neither at would have been GM Place at the time. I'm genuinely curious if Queen Elizabeth had actually stuck around for anything beyond the puck drop, or if it was like off to, I guess, Hotel Vancouver or wherever the heck they put royalty up in Metro Van. Harry was probably like at an Airbnb because he's no longer a full-time royal, but
no, but he got that Netflix money.
That's true. But let's talk a little bit about the game itself. So you have the San Jose Sharks in town to the Vancouver Canucks, and this was a game where we felt Vancouver needed to come out and prove a point, especially having come off of a loss against the Seattle Kraken over the course of the weekend. It didn't really start off in my mind well. Maybe some of that is the hubbub as to who was dropping the puck, the sort of, I don't want to say the buzz in the building, because it did seem like there was some good energy. But once the second period rolled around, the Vancouver Canucks seemed to settle into things. And it was at that point it felt to me that the Canucks were going to win. And that's not to suggest that when, Hurdle scores less than a minute in the third period, that I'm not maybe sitting there with a little, tightness internally. It still felt like the Vancouver Canucks, better team, we're going to find a way to win, which is what they ultimately did.
Yeah, and we talked before, about, stars making their presence felt in tough games, and, Quinn for sure did that. Definitely, stepped up and was just, this is the game, I'm taking it on now. So.
Mm-hmm. He's showcasing himself extremely well, but also now starting to become more than the player that we've seen him sort of be at this point. We'll talk a little bit about it as we get into the week, but Quinn is now I was going to say an offensive defenseman, but no, he's a well-rounded defenseman. He is quite literally the anchor on the blue line and is such a threat that he provides, such a clearing to his line mate, which for the most part is often Philip Hronek, who in turn himself is definitely finding his place. Yeah, right. So, you then think, well, Chris, I remember you saying that the rest of the Canucks blue line is hot junk, and that's no longer the case. Right down to, in this particular game, it's Friedman and Gilson, probably the third pairing, but I think Tyler Myers is still Tyler Myers, but he's not hurting the team. There is a reliable blue line presence. JT Miller got himself another goal in this game. This is a guy who is currently, given Fs every which way that he can.
Yeah, he's so physically, mentally, tactically engaged in every game now, like from start to finish, not just like when he feels like it or on the power play. Like, yeah, he's so defensively responsible in ways that he wasn't before. So, yeah, he is like for sure earning his contract at the moment, at least.
Yeah. But the Vancouver Canucks get that 3-1 dub against the Sharks before they head back out on the road. They have to find their way into Denver to play the Colorado Avalanche, which trying to explain to Baby Force is somewhat difficult. She wants to know where the city of Colorado happens to be. Well, Colorado is a state. What's a state? Well, it's kind of like a province. But why don't they call it a province? Well, it's in the United States. Oh, so they play in the entire state? No, they're kind of like the BC Lions. They play in a city, but they're named after the bigger area. Well, what city? Denver. Well, they should be called the Denver Avalanche. I mean, she's got a point.
Yeah, it's weird how some teams end up like that. I wonder what the thinking behind it is every time. Because Vancouver Canucks kind of belong to BC as a province. You'd think.
Well, they do. The Canucks would have they're very much representative of the entire province, and all fans of the team in the province of BC are welcome. But yeah, you're right. You don't see too many broader regional teams, but a few do exist.
Anyway, yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, the Coyotes switched their name to Arizona. And I don't think it's just because they moved. But yeah, the Vancouver Giants are still the Vancouver Giants, even though they're in Langley. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I guess Langley Giants doesn't have the best branding. But yeah,
well, I mean, I'm gonna take us off the rails further.
Okay,
you brought up Langley, the Tier 2 soccer club in that area called Vancouver FC.
Oh, I wondered what they were. I have seen kids in that uniform.
Yeah, so they are out in Langley, right? And the struggle here was that they even tried to create a social media game that had them compare themselves to Vancouver Whitecaps FC. One, not even close. Two, they weren't even the better team in the Tier 2 scene in our sort of geographic area. So
yeah, I mean, it's a bit like a Vancouver Giants going to rename themselves just because they moved. Probably not. You got to keep that.
Fair play. But to the game, this was a really good game. This was going to be the game as to which Vancouver was going to see probably their toughest competition, arguably on this sort of week. Not to take anything away from the rival, quote unquote, that they face a little bit later. But the first period, you saw two teams really sort of testing each other. Höglander scores a goal, and Vancouver just got a little too excited, maybe?
Yeah, honestly, the whole game felt pretty toe-to-toe for most of it. I know Colorado, went up very early on in the third, but, in general, up until that fourth goal, it felt super tight. But, yeah, I thought it was a good game. I thought Nils Höglander had another great game. I say another, I just mean on the season. I'm not praising his slew foot against San Jose. That looked gross, and yeah, probably
so, okay. On the slew foot, so when I saw the replay and they gave him an intent to injure penalty, I found that harsh.
Sure,
However,
I did think it was probably a more you can't do that penalty.
Yeah, I had no problem with the 5. That is a slew foot.
Yeah.
Clear as day, and it wasn't you accidentally, stuck your leg between his to take him down. It was a slew foot, clear and clear. What had me sort of then give some pause to consider was what occurred in this game. So Canucks are down 2-1 going into the second period. Second period gets underway, and Vancouver is starting to play a much more aggressive style of game. Not to suggest the first wasn't, just now, anytime they seem to be behind, they're like, caged animals in some respect. And Vancouver creates a situation that starts to get Colorado into penalty trouble. Now, when a team is starting to get frustrated like that, things start to occur. And you had two players proceed to introduce themselves to their hockey sticks on a very personal level. Brock Boeser first cross-checking Josh Manson, and then Josh Manson in turn returning the favor, cross-checking Brock Boeser. When you watch the replay, Brock was a cross-check. Manson was more, I'm going to hold my stick up high and your face is going to run into it. I had no problem when they both got sent off, too, for cross-checking. But when they review this and they're like, oh, Manson had intent to injure, gets himself a game misconduct, then I'm like, okay, well, if this is just the NHL and they're taking a harder line on intent to injure and applying it in these many situations, I'm actually okay with the intent to injure to that slew foot. But I don't have any faith that this is actually true.
Yeah, and I think it's a valid point. I do think subconsciously part of the why it feels wrong that it was Niels Höglander getting intent to injure is because it's Niels Höglander, and our impression of him so far as Canucks fans, like, he's never had a major in his NHL career.
He has now.
Yeah. It's that he's a very
fine.
Sweet, lovely boy, but which I'm sure he is. But like, as I think it was Cody Hughes was pointing out, like, his junior career was pretty, like, goon-like at times. He had a lot of elbows to the head back in Sweden. So maybe it's not that out of character, but yeah, I do think it was subconsciously partly that. I mean, who knows? Intent to injure is such a weird penalty anyway, because, like, when player safety are looking at stuff, they don't look at, the injury that happens, because you could get lucky. So intent to injure is just a bit of a strange one anyway, I think.
Yeah. So with Manson now sitting in the box, well, actually not in the box, on his way to the dressing room, but now having a 5-minute major for cross-checking as opposed to a 2-minute minor, you'd think that, oh, hey, the Vancouver Canucks, they're going to get an opportunity with 3 minutes to potentially take a lead. That's not actually what happened, because before chance for that to occur happens, where Brock comes out of the penalty box, Anthony Beauvillier is then assessed a minor for interference. And just as his penalty comes to a conclusion, Tyler Myers goes and gets called for slashing on Nathan MacKinnon. So the Vancouver Canucks got, I think it was like 20 seconds of power play time on this 5-minute major, and ultimately came out of it with diddly squish. It wasn't, wasn't to be, it wasn't to be. But I feel that this kind of maybe deflated the Canucks in some respect, or maybe took them off their game, or had them, thinking too much about the referees potentially, I don't want to say making up calls. They weren't.
No,
but like, third period rolls out and the Vancouver Canucks are down again. And then it was like the air started slowly leaking out of that balloon.
Yeah, I just thought it was a bit of a crazy second period that everyone kind of got distracted by, and clearly Canucks did more than Colorado, and they were able to focus themselves again in a way that Canucks just weren't. But, like, Cal McCarr, just, like, he is a fantastic player. His quality told, for sure.
I think he's good.
I think he's all right, Like...
Yeah, he's got a future in this league.
Yeah, and honestly, like, arguing about whether Quinn Hughes or Cal McCarr is better right now, like, who cares? Like, aren't we just so lucky that the two best defensemen in this league, who are the most fun to watch, playing our conference. Like,
I'd have to say, like, the way the NHL looks at things, Quinn Hughes is the better of the two because he's currently putting up production that Kale can't.
I know, which is crazy, honestly.
That's not taking away anything from the car. It's just the NHL seems to put a lot of weight onto your offensive production when you're a defenseman.
Yeah. What was I... Just on Quinn Hughes, I saw some clip from a sports podcast, like a podcast the other day, and they're looking at, you know, the two Hughes brothers in New Jersey, plus Quinn in Vancouver and the production, and just saying, like, what were they, like, this is just, like, amazing DNA, what's in their genes, like, as if their, like, parents weren't both fantastic hockey players, and one's a hockey coach, and, like, Quinn credits his mom with his game sense and just, like, skating ability, and yeah. So, that was, like, do your research comment a bit. But, yeah, like, honestly, Quinn Hughes, Cale Makar, like, I am glad to be alive in this timeline.
So, Canucks, they take that L, and they decide that they need to go and prove a point. Heading into Seattle in what has now been aptly called the I-Fivalry.
Yeah. It looks really bad written down, but it sounds funny.
Yeah, I had not heard that or seen it until it got brought up during the broadcast.
The enemy of the show, Wyatt Arndt did coin that back in the day. I hate to give him credit, but...
Well, the Vancouver Canucks go into Seattle. They lost to Seattle. Seattle's feeling, you know, a little good about themselves. The crowd there is buzzing. You've also got, you know, a lot of Canucks jerseys in the barn. Former hosts Clay Emo is down there. And, you know, Clay only goes to games where the Vancouver Canucks are going to win, apparently. But no, the Canucks come out and proceed to set the tone early. And, you know, good guy Bluger gets his first of the season. But it felt like Seattle just couldn't get anything together. The Vancouver Canucks' aggressive forecheck really disrupted anything that Seattle could try to put together. Yes, Cartier scores a goal. I think it's Cartier.
Yeah. Like to watch.
Yeah. But there wasn't anything that Seattle was able to go in and manufacture. Downco played well. And as the third period rolled around, it was quite clear that the Vancouver Canucks had it, you know, well in control. Again, it's similar to this experience that we saw against the Sharks earlier on the week. Vancouver's only up by a goal, and old school Vancouver Canucks, that's the worst lead possible, maybe save for a 2-goal lead. Yet it never occurred to me that the Canucks were going to lose. Lafferty goes and gets himself his 5th. Hoglander gets his 7th, and then Mikheyev shortly after that ensures that Seattle is going home unhappy, leaving Vince Dunn to refer to losing to a team like that. Though I did see someone on social media refer to it as it's tough to lose to a team like that, with the emphasis being on their performance as opposed to the team they were playing.
Like that.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, hockey players aren't the most eloquent of people at the best of times, never mind, like, after a game, after a loss. Like, I'm sure that's correct, but it's way funnier to take it the other way, especially with the history of the phrase to Canucks fans. Because, yeah, honestly, the rivalry, I mean, we played them twice in 2 weeks, which has probably helped, but, like, look at the Sharks game. We'll move on to the Sharks game shortly, but, like, San Jose are bad this year, but because Canucks have played them 500 times, there's some bad feeling generating there. Like, you almost just need, that's, like, a big building block to creating a rivalry, but the NHL don't seem that interested in doing that.
Well, it's hard to build a rivalry when you play a team 500 times and one of those teams loses 499 of the games.
Yeah.
But I think Ray hit the nail on the head. To actually have a rivalry occur, meet the team in the playoffs.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and we've talked about that before. But there's definite things that the NHL could have done better, like Vancouver Canucks cracking on a weekend their first season.
Home and away.
Yeah, that's
like how many times have we seen a home and away to like Calgary or to Edmonton? Have we seen a home and away to Seattle yet? I don't know. Maybe we have. It's just not apparent to me that we've seen that.
And like honestly, it was Neil's day yesterday, or Friday.
Do you think that Neil Zoman had signed his contract before the game or after he got a couple apples and he got third star?
I mean, it was announced on social media, but getting the call up and the new contract on the same day. Like anyone that's been watching Baby Canucks games, Neil Zoman has been pretty dominant, and that's what you want to see in an NHL player playing in the AHL, right? So I do think he belongs long term in the NHL, even if that's not quite now. But yeah, it was cool seeing that Neil's line as, I hate to quote Wyatt twice in an episode, so let's never mention him again. But yeah, it was cool to see both of them have a good day on Friday.
Yeah. So the Canucks get themselves a dub and they head down to San Jose, where I think, if I recall, I had said this is the game that had worried me. I talked about travel being an issue.
Trap.
Right? The trap game. And what's interesting is if you happen to watch the broadcast, they talked about travel. They talked about how the Vancouver Canucks had to make a choice. Did they fly on that night? Do they fly in the same day of the game? They talked about how both situations disrupt player routine. And the Vancouver Canucks, for what little I saw, looked sluggish and sloppy. And I say little I saw is that a lot going on Saturday. And unfortunately, I didn't get in to see the game until it was 4-2. I'd sort of passively paid attention. But it sounds like if I were to go in and give you a synopsis, I tuned into the exciting part of the game.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that, in a way that, watching that 5-2 by Colorado was actually a very close game. The 4-2 by San Jose, it's not that...
Well, it was 4-3 final.
4-3, rather. It was only close in the last 5 minutes.
Yeah. Well, on the ice, on the scoreboard, it was close going into the third period. But one of the things that I saw, having sort of watched some of the replay, is that the Vancouver Canucks were generating chances that they just couldn't put into open nets, right? Yeah. They were getting opportunity despite playing poorly, and it was them who could not get any puck luck. It's not that Kakinen was standing on his head, making unbelievable save after unbelievable save. He looked culpable, but the Vancouver Canucks just were not getting any luck whatsoever. Despite all of that, going into the third period 2-2 in a sloppy game, these, again, are the games where good teams find ways to manufacture wins, and in this particular case, Vancouver could not do that. They themselves were caught napping, and they arguably sported San Jose 2 goals in early in the third period to make it that much more difficult. And it wasn't until really, I want to say the last, 6 minutes? Maybe?
Yeah.
It was before they had pulled DeSmith, but the Vancouver Canucks had started to play much more aggressively. It was like they woke up, realized that, oh my goodness, it's the third period already. We're already past the midway point. And when Brock Boeser scores that goal with the net empty to make it 4-3, I'm like, oh, wow. Watch the Canucks go and tie this up. Everything had me leading myself to think that was possible. And then, actually, was it a minute and a half left where it was a poor pass back to the blue line and San Jose has the puck, and I commented to my wife and daughter, we're all watching it, and I'm like, oh yeah, well, San Jose is going to score an empty net goal. Game over. Missed the net. And ices it, and it's like, oh, well, hey, well, Vancouver, got to be good to be lucky to be good. It was for naught.
Yeah. I mean, just in the same way that although Canucks came very close to tying up in their loss against the Kraken the week before, like, it was still, even though they came very close to tying it up in this game, but the fact that they allowed a lesser team to get on top of them like that, that's the more worrying thing. Like, that Granlund goal was basically uncontested.
What are you talking about? The Canucks, they put their sticks in the way.
Yeah. I mean,
heaven forbid they skate in front of him.
When Michael Granlund's going coast to coast on you, like, playing for San Jose, like, take a look in the mirror, I think.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was a bit disappointing. But
yeah. If there were some positives, though, to take from the game, Brock Boeser was showing that he's following JT Miller's lead and acquiring Fs to which he could give out. This is not to suggest he has not given Fs before. He certainly has. But he's playing, I was going to say, a sharp style of hockey, right? Like, we're starting to see him assert himself, bite back when he, gets pushed around in front of the net.
Yeah.
He's becoming that power forward we always envisioned him to possibly be. And if he develops himself into a similar style or similar vein that JT Miller possesses, that's a pretty potent pair of power forwards to have.
That was an excellent alliteration as well.
Thank you. And just point out that Brock Boeser is currently tied for the NHL lead of goals with Nikita Kucherov, who unfortunately jumped in front of Quinn Hughes 35-33.
Yeah. But, like, who could have imagined that Brock Boeser has 15 goals? We're not even at the end of November yet. Like, it's the season he deserves to have, but, like, he often had the potential of having, but various things off the ice, injuries, and it was kind of like the season he needed to have in a way. It's kind of like the potential that he showed in his sophomore year that, like, we need to see that again. So, yeah, it's very satisfying to watch.
So the Vancouver Canucks come back from a short road trip with only one win, but with the win at the start of the week against the Sharks, it's a 500 week. One thing, however, is very clear. We have now passed U.S. Thanksgiving. And as far as statistics go in the NHL, teams who hold playoff positions after U.S. Thanksgiving make the playoffs 9 times out of 10. So if you're a Vancouver Canucks fan, that bodes very well. Yeah.
It's funny to think, though, like, in the historically weak Pacific Division, that, like, we're still looking up at the Golden Knights and the Kings, like, teams that are Kings finally having their year, their kind of plan to come to fruition of young players. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not worried or anything, but I feel like it's going to be one of those half and half divisions again, where you have the strongest teams in the Pacific and then also the weakest teams in the Pacific. But yeah.
So looking ahead, the Vancouver Canucks are back at home for a couple of games. They take on the Anaheim Ducks on Tuesday, the Vegas Golden Knights on Thursday, and then they head to Calgary for a game against the Flames in Calgary for Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday. This week is an interesting one for the Vancouver Canucks. One, they get to take on the Golden Knights. Apparently, they are a good team.
Yeah.
They are taking on a team in Anaheim who is not as good as a Golden Knights team happens to be, as well as a Flames team who's not as good as the Golden Knights happen to be. If you go strictly by record, the Vancouver Canucks get 2 out of a possible 3 wins. But there is actually a game that worries me more than the one at home against Vegas. And it's the one in Calgary.
Yeah. I mean, Calgary finding their feet a bit more. I still don't think they're living up to the promise that they had a couple of years ago. But, yeah, I know what you mean. I'm concerned, like we talked about trap games before, and, yeah, going to Calgary on a Saturday I don't love. I feel like the Canucks are going to win. Like, I'm pretty sure about that.
Well, as of recording, the Ducks have lost 5 straight.
Yeah.
It's not a team on the upswing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm pretty confident in the Canucks on Tuesday. I think it'll be a good game against the Knights on Thursday, whatever the result. But, yes, against Calgary.
Goaltender in the league in Aiden Hill.
Yeah.
He's got a .197 GAA right now.
Aiden Hill, what a story. Remember him in San Jose?
Did he play in San Jose?
Yeah. Often not as the first choice, so... Anyway.
So, what record do you have the Canucks, or how many points? That's the thing, is we can't say record because of the loser point. How many points do you think the Canucks get from this 3-game stretch between episodes?
3.
3 points? Okay, that's what I was going to say. I was going to give them 3 points.
2-1-0 in my mind.
That's it too. That's exactly, because for me, that Calgary game is the one that it has trouble written all over it.
Sorry, just to go back to Aiden Hill briefly. Did you know who's from Comox? I didn't know that.
No, I didn't. But I don't pay that close attention to players not dressed in a Vancouver Canucks
jersey. He was
jersey.
giving very American energy, and I can't explain that. Just there you go. Good local kid. Another local kid with a Stanley Cup.
Well, we're going to take a short break. Feel free to look up Aiden Hill and where he's from, wherever you can. And you're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast.
He liked to say the F word.
Oh, then get the here then. Okay, see ya.
Is going to have the F word on it.
I wish I could give you an explanation about it. I can't. You, out of here.
You said the F word, Dad.
You called me the F word.
Have you thrown any money down on the Vancouver Canucks winning the Stanley Cup this season, Anna?
I have not. And I have heard about the odds. And I am... Before we get on to the main topic of this F word, which, as you may have guessed already, is gambling, because we did flag that last week. But also, I don't want to hear about the Canucks being Stanley Cup favourites, especially on a national broadcast. Like, don't look at us. Don't perceive us. Leave us be. And we'll see where we are. Like, it's November. Leave us alone. But on a more serious note, I did want to talk about adverts, gambling commercials that we are seeing just more and more prominently, and how gambling is becoming like an intrinsic part of hockey these days. Obviously, there's no shade at former host of this show, Matt Lee, like, who does work like in that area, and it's definitely no shade to any of our friends in the industry that like have gambling segments, advertise gambling, especially not like there's quite a few very strong female voices in the game that make a lot of their money or get a lot of their content from, you know, promoting betting in one way, shape, or form. Literally, this is no shade at anyone apart from the gambling companies themselves, which I think is a super, super toxic industry. And I think it's just time we took it a lot more seriously than we currently do. Like, to me, I think it's absolutely harrowing to watch a hockey broadcast where you see an advert for addiction counseling and rehab, and then the next ad break, it's advertising like a betting company. Like, those two things are not related. Like, gambling ruins people's lives. It's a predatory industry. And I think we just need to take it a lot more seriously. What have your thoughts been on, like, kind of seeing this boom in Canada?
Well, I'll be very transparent in that I will on occasion put some money down on something for S's and G's. Like for me, it's like, let's say $20, and that $20 is either going to go into a couple of cups of coffee from Starbucks, or is it going to go to me betting with my heart, which I've learned my heart does not love me as much as I love the bets it convinces me to make. But what I found interesting is how prolific sports betting has become in the advertising space. And I was curious, like, why is that? Like, what was the lever that would suddenly take the, hey, know your limit, play within it, which we were accustomed to as sort of BCLC, to the next level where we're now seeing, and we're inundated with it on every sports broadcast. And I look to a shift that occurred in the province of Ontario in 2021 as being the impetus. They essentially launched a regulated online gaming market, which then, one, opens the door to the largest potential audience that sports in Canada can interact with. Two, also drives home the fact that these sports teams in that province are owned by the networks that provide most of the content we get, whether it be through Rogers, who owns Sportsnet, or Bell, who owns TSN. And the gambling industry has money to burn. And as a result can throw so much into the marketing, but then the actual cost of the ads themselves. And I feel that what we're seeing is simply, telecom looking for a way to make a buck, and our largest province equally trying to get in on the action. I am appalled that you'll see an ad for addiction counseling, followed by an ad to gamble. It's also concerning that the industry has been provided the ability to self-monitor or self-police. Like, I've always found it, I don't want to say humorous, it's not the right word, but intriguing maybe that, and I'll use the BC example. You go into a casino here in the province of BC and it'll talk that you're not permitted to be here if you're self-excluded. I might have a problem, but until such time as I say I have a problem and sign the paper, you have every right to let me in. Yeah. Problem or no problem. Like, that is a problem.
Yeah. I mean, and long-term listeners of the show may point out that we've done gambling ads in the past. We've done ad reads for gambling. I'm sure listeners will also note that I clearly had no idea what I was talking about in every single gambling segment. I don't think it's a thing we would do in the future, but like, again, what we're talking about as the problem is these companies and their predatory way of operating, and that includes the advertising. Yeah, like I think the most troubling one to me is do you know what a face-off is? Then you can bet on the game. Do you know, like, which teams are playing? Then you can bet on the game. Like, almost just being like, if you know the basic amount, this isn't a skill, just, like, and as funny as the Americans don't know jack about hockey, commercial is, like, yeah, it's just so scary to me that it's just like, don't gamble with the Americans, just gamble with us. Like, we're safe.
Yeah, don't let Chip make all that money. He may never pay you.
Yeah.
it's funny that you talk about if you know which teams are playing, you can bet on the game. There was, I was watching some Sunday Night Football before we came down to record, and there's an ad with Kurt Warner, former 11th player. It talks about football being an unpredictable sport based on a number of different percentages that X number of, teams win by 3 points or less, so on and so forth. So long story short, you need to understand that there's no sure thing. But hey, if you're aware of that, here's where you can go to place those bets. Like, that's the part that I feel is a problem is the accessibility is to which this promotes. Like, you can go to playnow.com, very easily log in, bet, so long as you're in the province of BC. Put some money in on an online account. I can do it with, Interact real quick, and I could be broke in a moment. There's no means to impede me really from doing it online. I know some might say, well, Chris, if BCLC doesn't do it, Chip down and who knows where it does it, and he gets the money instead. You're right. But we trust the provincial lottery organizations probably a little bit more, and that inherent trust gives us or convinces us that maybe there's a greater likelihood that we're going to get that big dopamine hit when we win big.
Yeah. And I think in general, I just coming from where I come from, and betting is just so prolific in the Premier League. Obviously at the moment in the NHL, Shane Pinto's...
I want to say I was able to go into a post office and place bets.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I might be misremembering here, but when I was in the UK, I was like, holy smokes, I can't remember what it was they were advertising. Maybe it was a place I could buy stamps or something like that, and it had the...
Yeah, I mean, usually you'd be in a bookies in the UK, but you can play the lottery in a post office for sure. Anyway, but the point is that there's a current Premier League player serving a ban for gambling. Obviously Shane Pinto right now for the Ottawa Senators. It's an issue, and I do think last year I read the book, or earlier this year I read the book Might Bite, which is about a gambling addict's sort of descent and mental health issues, where to the point where he was thinking of suicide, and he was 5 minutes away from it probably. And this is a guy who's lost thousands and thousands of pounds over and over, and yet he was treated like royalty by these betting companies because he'd made them so much money. And, he should have been flagged as a problem gambler. A lot of these sites say they have systems in place to stop problem gambling happening, and yet, they don't enact their policies, and they allow these people to get into debt and who knows what else.
Yeah. It has the potential to be extremely scary to an individual before they realize how bad of a problem it happens to be. If enough people, however, get into really rough shape, it has a much broader impact on us as a society. What I've also come to learn is there isn't really a sort of not one-stop shop, but a mechanism to get help, support, and education. It is easier for me to go place a bet than to research whether or not I should be.
Yeah. And like we say, I don't find any personal joy in gambling. I never have done. I bet on horses in the Grand National before I kind of knew how badly the horses were treated. But I don't get, to me it takes joy away from sport, from watching sport. But I understand that, placing a bet here or there for fun is, there's nothing wrong with that. It's the industry as a whole that I find troubling, and the way it's been advertised, especially this season, is really worrying to me.
Well, it's only a matter of time until that's all we see on a broadcast is
Yeah.
A variety of different ads for gambling.
Yeah.
And then the mainline sponsors of the broadcast or the team or teams that are playing themselves. That's it.
Yeah. It's a shame.
We're curious what your thoughts on this sort of inundation of sports gambling as it pertains to what we've seen in sport. Let us know in C4 Discord, discord.io/C4 podcast. Is it too much? Is it okay in your mind? Are we making a mountain out of a molehill? I don't think we are, but as Anna pointed out,
there's lots I don't know about it. So I would if people have more educated opinions with their in-depth knowledge of gambling, please share them.
But here we are, Anna. End of a broadcast of ourselves. There may have been ads. Who knows? Wouldn't it be a shame if there was like sports gambling ads at the start of this podcast that I can't get rid of?
Yeah.
Please. Not ours. That's the network that inserts them, which I would love to be able to turn off. Like, honestly, we get nothing from them. We're in, as I said, and I'm going to continue to mention this time and time again, we're in a weird situation where we joined a network prior to a pandemic who then passed us over to a different network, took away all the advantage that we had in being part of that network. We get absolutely nothing from it, and now won't sort of return the phone call. So we are here, but if we were to try to fix things, we go dark. That sucks. But any words of wisdom that you can share with our listeners this week, Anna?
I just want to, my final thing is I want to give a shout out to friend of the show, Brock McGillis, who is on 100 Cities in 100 Days, I believe, tour, which is absolutely mad, but he is going around North America educating teams at all different levels about inclusion in hockey, specifically LGBTQ2S+ issues. So, he's an incredible person, an amazing educator, so we wish him the best of luck.
That's awesome. I imagine he doesn't have time to join us in the show, probably.
I imagine not in the next couple months. He has just been in Vancouver. He unfortunately did see that Kraken game, but what are you going to do?
Yeah, well, it might have brought him joy to see the Vancouver Canucks lose.
Maybe it would. He's a bit of a troll that way.
Yeah, but we love him for it anyway. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Words of wisdom from me. Approximately 4 weeks left in the calendar year. If you've got, benefits or things that you need to use before they expire, time to consider using them.
Smart.
I personally do not have benefits as to which I can use, but I'm using the benefits that I subscribe to that my wife has. So I'm, again, trying to get my money's worth out of that. But yeah, the calendar year is almost up. We are reaching that point in our broadcast sort of schedule where it might be disrupted, but we'll serve you more information when it becomes available and we figure things out, because Anna's going home.
I am. I just booked my train tickets for Christmas Eve to get from London to my mum's new place on the south coast. I mean, the first time I looked it up, it was 4 changes for what would usually be a 2.5 hour journey. So I have managed to narrow that down to 2 changes, or 1 change, but I might be on a coach for part of it. But it's exciting. It's happening.
I would presume that maintenance isn't going to occur on Christmas Eve.
It's quite tricky. Like, whether it's maintenance, it's strikes, or it's, I think the problem is fewer staff. That's what makes it so tricky. But the UK is very blessed to have a very good rail network. It's just when it breaks, it really does break.
Yeah, I can't speak from much experience, but I know in a trip that we had visiting my late sort of grandmother-in-law that there were maintenance taking place that resulted in one leg of our journey not being accessible by train. So they threw us on a bus, which was perfectly fine. The bus got us to the station faster than the train would have, because they actually had us go direct as opposed to sort of the stop that was going to occur in between. But what they didn't account for was that as the other train wasn't going to come through, they had a train coming the other direction, reverse, and leave early. So when we got there, it was pulling away, and there seemed to be quite a bit of confusion as to why that train did not wait for this and left apparently pretty darn empty.
Yeah, sometimes the things don't quite line up, so
Yeah.
please pray for me for a smooth journey down to the South Coast on Christmas Eve.
Yeah. And if you want to give Anna some kind words or hot tips as to how to take the train and navigate in the United Kingdom, again, C4 Discord is the place to do it, discord.io/C4 podcast. You could also, reach out to us on whatever the heck X is these days, Twitter, Zitter, X, at the C4 podcast, or on Threads at the real C4 podcast, because someone already had the C4 podcast. Maybe it was us. I do not know. If you'd like to support our show financially, either by throwing a couple of bucks our way, or alternatively to subscribe on a monthly or annual basis, you can do so by going to support.c4podcast.com, which will in turn forward you to Buy Me a Coffee, or as Anna and I like to call it,
Buy me a pint.
and you can do just that. Again, a couple of bucks, whatever amount you would prefer, you could throw our way. Monthly or annual subscriptions, $5 a month, or for a year, it's $50 for the course of the year. That's all in Canadian funds. And all the money that you provide us goes back into the show. It quite literally pays the bills, the platform that we use to record the show on, hosting, all of that jazz. And, every dollar that you provide us, we do greatly appreciate. But Anna, it's time to wrap things up. You are A4603. I am at Light Force. And this show, well, we out.